Hi, my name's Erwin, and this is the Poetry Lighthouse podcast. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to interview poet The Paperman, who will talk about his poetry collection, The Paperman's Tales. Welcome, it's such a pleasure to have you today in this podcast. So, I'm very curious to know more about your poetry collection and everything that you are doing currently as a writer. But first, could you introduce yourself briefly and tell us how you came to discover poetry?
Certainly. So my name's The Paperman, first name Paper, last name Man, or The Paperman, short for paper, long name. Yeah, just The Paperman. That's all there is to that. But in all honesty, the only way that I really discovered poetry was only in most recent years. I was first introduced to poetry through basic school books, through, say, Robert Frost, The Road Less Traveled, and Edgar Allan Poe's works. And then I looked at it and it bore no interest to me when I first looked at it. And bear in mind, I was about 6 or 7 at the time. And I'm looking at this and go, okay, sure, this is fine. And it goes on and on and on. And it's awesome. But yeah, I don't see the point in it. And then as I got a lot older, and then I started reading more into different storybooks. So I then started reading into books by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and through Charles Dickens, and seeing just how descriptive they would become. And then I furthered that by actually listening to rap battles. So my entire basis for how I learned to write is based around rap battles. I would sit in my office and just listen to copious amounts of rap battles, and listening very carefully in between the egregious insults and lots of uses of cuss words. Past that point, just looking very, very much into the technique that was used, the splitting of rhymes, the rhyming between syllables, and the alliteration that's used. It is fantastic to see just how much care and time is put towards that. And it's from there that I learned to write. And it's from that point there, I first started writing on the 8th of May, 2020. And that was right when, of course, when the pandemic hit. I just recently missed out on my dream job. I had just recently been moved to a different place, and I worked in a very, very cold, very dark studio at the time. And so I joined a group called We Create Now, headed up by Keith Beluso. And there's a picture and a prompt that gets put together every day, and you have to write for that. And I decided, well, I got nothing else to do, so I'll just write a poem for that. And then the head of the group, Keith Beluso, wrote back to me and said, "Hey, man, that's actually pretty good. You like this? Okay, well, I'll write another." And the next day I kept doing that and kept going, and I've been writing ever since.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad, and it's very inspiring as well to listen how people come from different types of backgrounds and the way they make their way into poetry. It's always very interesting. So I'm also interested to know, how do you find motivation, or how do you find the inspiration to write your poems? Is there any sort of rituals that you tend to do every time, or does it come just all of a sudden?
Hmm. Very good question, because I don't have any uh, any real sort of motivations in a way. As I said, with Recreate Now, you get a picture and a prompt, and you get a small phrase. It could be a word, maybe a word, or a short sentence, and then you have to build off the top of that. And in terms of routines, I would dedicate myself every night. I would say to myself, okay, between the hours of 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. at night, I'm going to sit and write something. I know that ain't going to be great. It may not great. It could be the same lines repetition, but I told myself I'm going to write. At least this length, this time, I'm going to tell myself to write. And in doing that, it felt a lot easier when you've dedicated some time for yourself to say, I'm going to do this. And when you've mastered that discipline in yourself, to say, no matter what, I'm going to do this, whether I like it or not, I'm going to do this. it then becomes a lot easier for you to create when you see it's no longer a burden to you and your writing becomes stronger to that. It becomes far more natural for it to flow out of you. And in terms of the motivation I draw and the inspiration I draw from all those prompts and pictures, I would either look at the prompt and take it to an egregious place, just look at it and see, okay, if they start here at the starting line, okay, can I take them into the mountains, then into the stars, and then through hills, and then underwater, and then back again? Just try to make it as ludicrous as possible, or make it as simple as possible. Look at the situation at face value. How can I personify that, or how to dehumanize that? Look at every possible angle and build off it. So to give an example of it, there was a prompt at one point, which was a picture of a dog, and the prompt just said dog. There's a lot to build on there, right? There's like tons just to start with. But initially I thought of it, okay, so what am I going to do with this? So yes, it's a dog. There, you could talk about the type of dog. Don't want to do that. Okay, how do I feel today? I feel kind of sad. Okay, so I feel kind of sad. I want to write a sad poem about a dog. What can I do? Okay, well, I know of some sad dog movies. There's Marley and Me, Old Yeller. Yes, Old Yeller, we'll go with that. And what sort of services do dogs use? Well, they act as guide dogs. They work in the military. Military. Okay, well, do a poem about a dog that's in the military that got discharged over a bomb going off accidentally. Cool. And I wrote that. That's how my mind manages to connect the dots, and then finding different tangents and even more tangents to build off of that. And the scary bit is when your brain starts to think at 100 miles an hour to which your fingers can't keep up with it. It is a fantastic feeling as also a curse all at the same time. No, I want to capture that, but don't stop. Do that, but don't stop whatever you're doing. That's how I would describe my process in terms of my writing.
Wonderful. Thank you for the insights. I mean, you illustrated very well how the process works in your mind. And, everybody has different processes, but I wanted to touch a little bit more on having a routine. I think that's
Mm,
sometimes important. Some people are not able to have a strict routine, and some people do, especially if we have all the things to do. We need to find a
mm,
specific time where we sit ourselves down. But I think what's important is that you condition your mind and your body during this specific time to write. Well, it happened to me that, for example, I might be good at writing in the morning, so I would wake up early in the mornings to write. But sometimes that didn't work, and so I have to change it, and I change routines every now and then.
mm.
You know, but I think it's important to have this kind of determination if you really want to go for writing professionally. If you're doing it for
Yeah.
fun, then also it depends. If you're just it's a hobby just to have fun, then maybe you just do it when you have time and at random hours of the day. But I think it's
Mm,
really nice when you kind of set your time and you have like, oh, this is my hour, this is my poetry hour. And it kind of feels nice because it's your own space. And as you said, linking this to the idea of finding inspiration, I think this enables us to put all those feelings and things that we've carried throughout the day and set this
mm,
hour or two, or no matter how long it takes you, to put it on paper with all these imagery, and having that feel of accomplishment by the end of it, of, well, I did this poem today. So it's sort of a really it's just really nice to come up with something like that, especially if it's creative writing, because the thing
mm.
is, you can create no matter what. Like, the limits
Yeah.
are endless. So it's really interesting to know how the process of combining different things work for you, and how you use prompts that seem very vague and very simple, and turn them into an actual very round and complex sort of story. That's always really interesting. And I love when poetry is kind of this experimental storytelling way of providing us with the great imageries. I would never
Mm,
imagine a dog in the military, and and how that provides us a certain feeling of sort of maybe tiredness or sadness or whatever. It's always very
mm,
interesting, and I think it's always new and fresh, and that's what makes poetry become very authentic, very original. So thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. I'm really glad. Um,
You're welcome. If I could add to that around routines in terms of actually trying to build upon the routine, try to make a routine for yourself. I've found that the easiest way for you to actually dedicate time for yourself is to make it easier for yourself to create. If you want to make it a lot, if you want to make something a habit for yourself, make it easier to do that thing. For me, I would always have on my computer, I'd always have either a notepad open or I would have a book with me where I would be able to scribble stuff down. I'd make that as close and as available to me as possible, so enticing to me. And anything else that I wanted to do, so all my gaming controllers, I would put that in a separate room. I would put that in the dark. So for me to get the gaming controller, I have to go and switch on the light, go into the room, dig under a place, grab the controller, or I could easily sit down and write. If you make that process a little bit easier for yourself, it's far easier for that to become habitual. And in terms of the inspiration, I owe everything that I've done to very, very much to the creators behind We Create Now. And through the pictures and prompts that they gave, that was the spark that I needed, the flint, the match for everything for me to actually build those tangents. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to come up with those tangents there. But having that sort of cornerstone for yourself and being able to make up anything for yourself is a very, very good way to start.
That's a really good tip, actually. The fact of separating your space in a way that you know that this is your corner for writing, and in your mind you kind of relate that to poetry, for example, or creative writing. So whenever you sit there, you know you're going to write, and I think that that's really nice to avoid sort of distractions and just to focus on it. Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. And this also kind of trains your mind to become more creative in a way, to get out of your comfort zone. I think it's very hard at the beginning to sort of feel creative and kind of, you know, um, don't feel scared to bring all this weirdness and pictures that you come to your mind, because we often feel that everybody's going to judge us for what we write. But the thing is, when you quiet down that voice and you just write whatever crosses your mind, I think that's when the magic happens. And I like doing that, specific exercise of trying to just write for 3 minutes straight, whatever crosses your mind. I like to have this exercise because it really
Oh.
enables you to focus and just to keep it going. Yeah. Also, something that you mentioned is to having a specific notebook or a specific, kind of set of your creative tools that you use.
Mhm.
And I always recommend to use a notebook that you divide it in as many sections as you want. And you can just, even if it's just one sentence that came up to you, one in this random place, you can pop out your notebook and write it down. And maybe that becomes, from one sentence, maybe it becomes a whole poem, right? Or even a word
Mm.
that you really like if you write it down. And you have your kind of repertoire of all the, creativeness that came out of you. And that's
Mm.
why it's important to carry this notebook everywhere you go, because oftentimes it just happens that it comes to us in the most random places at the most random times. So
It's
I think it's
fleeting,
really
yeah.
interesting to, or even if it's on your phone, to open that notes app and just to type it down, but never
I've done
let
that.
it go, because you can always come back to it. So I'd say that's really important for creators. Good. Thanks again for that insight. I think a lot of people might find it helpful um, to get to know more options of how to, get creative.
Mm.
Um, right. So now I know that you've just published a really wonderful collection. So first, before discussing your book, could you give us a little bit of a description of what type of poems do you have in this collection?
Well, the types of poetry that I write is basically anywhere and everywhere. If you can think of a profession that anyone has ever worked in, I've probably written about it. I've written about artworks, I've written about knights, different professions of every kind, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, lovers, and everything that's very hard to find. From Euphoria to Dystopian, back again through Triumph and stories that are both true and fictitious. I've written about depression, I've written about suicide, I've written about the love of a parent towards their children, the loss of a loved one to cancer, anything and everything in between all that, as well as silly stories of just trying to see how far I could push the alliteration envelope. And believe me, there have been people that within We Create now that know whenever that I tried to do this, and they will just sit there and look at me through the camera and going, really? Again? You've done this again? And as much as I possibly can, I try to step up the next bit of my work, always trying to improve upon what I previously did, trying to not repeat the same rhyme as far as I possibly can. And no matter what, try to be original, try to engage with the audience. And if I know that I made you cry or I made you laugh or actually made you feel exactly how that particular moment was described, then I know I've done my job properly. So to sum it up, my poetry is 365 days of my life as well as my own experiences, both through true stories and fictitious stories.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. And now, when it comes to the creation of it, so we know the process of writing your poems and the types of poems that we have in this. Can we go to the next step? And can you talk to us a little bit about how was self-publishing for you, and how did you manage to do that, or what was the process, the challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome these kind of challenges?
First off, I will say self-publishing is hard. Like, really, really, really hard. For those that haven't done it before, it is a very, very, very intricate process. So the two most difficult things in the entire self-publishing process for me is marketing as well as editing. First off, going to editing, in an artist's eyes, everything is always perfect. An artist will never want to admit to themselves that anything has any flaws to it, that anything is wrong. They never want to do that. I really don't like editing because I will sit there and I will never see any of my own mistakes. So actually being able to edit your own work, if you're going to write something, go back through it, double check it, all that's fine and well. But if you want to get really serious about it, go and find an editor. And when I mean find an editor, find someone that's accredited and be knowledgeable about how much you write. Yes, editing services are expensive, but if you send your work off in portions to get marked and get edited, it does help with the cost of that. The second around marketing is also very difficult if you have zero marketing sense, or if you aren't naturally a confident person, or if you really don't want to come off as arrogant when you first start, which is the very fine line that you have to ride within marketing. The one thing that you don't want to say to other people is, I am the greatest thing that has ever come out since sliced bread. And then everyone goes, yeah, all right, mate, move along. You don't want that. So understand the message that you're trying to put out and come up with a statement. If you can explain your entire poem, your entire collection in one sentence, then you have it. If you can base everything you have in one sentence, you have it. And also understanding how to use and leverage social medias. If you manage to put together review processes and things to that process there, and also building a website. Building a website, that was also a challenge in itself. So learning to do all these other skills just long before actually having to publish is a whole new ordeal in itself. But the final thing I'll mention to that is also in self-publishing, understanding the difference between consignment as well as print on demand, the differences in terms of royalties that you're going to make, what platform and what medium is best for you to publish a book, not only that, but your goals, do you want to sell lots of books, or do you want to make lots of money from your books? Because that is a trade-off. If you do look at that very carefully, there is a trade-off there. And learning the difference between that will separate you from becoming the #1 bestseller in that category, as well as possibly making multitudes worth of money. Not to say you are going to make multitudes of money, but understand and set goals for yourself long before you start.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And as well, I would say sometimes it's important not to have too much of a great expectations, because when we're starting off, especially when it comes to poetry, because let's be real, poetry is not going to make you rich. If you're trying to publish books that are for poetry, it's because you love it, because you want to share it with other people. I wouldn't say it's a very profitable in terms of marketing, just unless you're extremely popular and you've got a really good trade-off with a company, you might as well do a lot of make a lot of profit. But otherwise, you really have to bear in mind that this is more satisfaction of getting published and putting your mark in this world, putting your footprint in there,
Yeah.
and make other people feel things and read it, and it's just that gratification, I think, that we should seek for.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I understand. It is very tricky to know how it's going to do, because you never
Yeah.
know if people will actually buy it or not, or it depends on many, many factors. And sometimes when it comes to doing everything yourself, then it's even harder, because when it comes to marketing, you also need a team. You need someone who can help you, because otherwise, if you don't have this complements, this additional help, then it becomes a burden, and you spend so much time. And well, the thing is that obviously, if you seek out for if you're seeking or reach out to other people like publishers and stuff, it will cost you quite a bit. So I think it's important to bear that in mind, as you said. But I'm really glad, and it's not impossible, as you said. You just you've done it yourself, and that's the proof that it's absolutely possible. And yeah, I would definitely encourage everyone to get their voices out there, and just to think that this is something that you want to do because you love doing it, rather than something that you want to do to live off of it. I mean, if you manage to do that, fantastic. I mean, that's amazing. But it's not the end goal, you're right? So now that we're in your poetry collection, and you've run us through these entire stages of how you came up with this poetry collection, let's jump right into some of your poems, if that's all right.
Certainly.
All right. So as I said, I asked you to read 3 of your poems. If you were you able to pick some of them?
Yes, I was.
Fantastic. So you can do it in no matter which order you want. All right. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. And after you finish reading the poem, maybe we can discuss a little bit about it. And we do that for every poem.
Not a
Fantastic.
problem.
All right.
Okay, so the first one I'll start off with is one of the earliest ones that I wrote. It's called The Artist. And yes, you'll be hearing a range of different voices because there's multiple characters in this. Enjoy. The Artist.
Master, master, what will we do today?
The page asked of the artist. I don't know, my creation. Where would you like to be?
Let me see. I want to walk through a forest. Can you paint it for me?
The creator obliged, and with a few strokes formed a forest and painted in different shades of brown and green. Is that all you want, my creation? How about an ocean, a beach, and a few crustaceans?
Yes, please, master. That would make this place even bigger. Oh, and can you make it so the water from the ocean flows through the forest and makes a river? Have some plants to meet it and drink from the surface? Oh, how wonderful it would be to give this river a purpose. The artist smiled, and after a while, the river flowed through many bends, with the top of a hill being the start and the ocean its end. This is all fine and well, but can you put the sun in the sky? Is it day or night? It's hard to tell. The creation made a fair point, and using a brilliant canary yellow, he manufactured a light so bright that everything on the canvas with its rays of sunshine it would anoint. Master, master, I have a few more ideas. Could you please make these dreams of mine come true? The page asked the artist. Anything for you, my dear. I will lend you my ear. The page couldn't stop as the artist continued. In a few minutes, there was a house, a bench, a mouse, and a couple of cents, a tower, a mountain, a clock that rang every hour standing next to a fountain. Days, weeks, months, and years, no matter what the page requested, the artist would lend his ear, until one day it all stopped. Master? Master? Are you there? The page waited anxiously, and though it waited, it never heard the penny drop. Master, master, please hear my call. The world is turning grim, and the air is turning thin. It's hard to breathe and harder to see. I want you back. Please come back to me. I won't ask for anything at all. Just don't leave me. The page began to bawl. The paint began to drip as the wonderful atmosphere created was slowly starting to rip. But this was not all doom and gloom. As the world started to stop, through the fog the page could hear the sounds of a horse in a gentle trot. As it approached, the page felt a lump in its throat. What was it to do? It was all alone, and with no one to defend it to. Fear not, my creation. It's me. The artist dismounted from his stallion and looked into the eyes of his creation, and he looked deep. Why did you leave? The page questioned through its tears. Why do you weep? I left 'cause all I wanted was to be here. My time in my world has since ended, and the life I created here is the one I wanted to live out eternity in a world so splendid. But we can't see it. The fog has set in. Fear not, my creation. You just need to learn to smile again. But how can I smile when all that is beautiful is gone? Go back to the beginning. Appreciate every moment, every last one. Slowly the page started to remember, and the artist's creation slowly appeared out of the nether. The trees, the plains, the mountains, the rain, all looked different, but somehow it was very much the same. Master, I just remembered, you didn't sign your name. Why would I do that, when I can only be remembered for my pain? Master, a life that was loved is something that will trump death in an instant. And with the quill in his hand, he walked to the edge of his new land and signed, My masterpiece, your loving Vincent. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for such a wonderful reading. You really brought the text to life, and with these different voices, because as you said, we have different characters and very interesting and vivid characters. Okay, so first of all, I would like to say congratulations, because I think the storytelling behind this poem is very powerful, and it has such a beautiful moral, a really powerful message. And also, I really like the characters, like especially very unique, with this master and the painting. Also, I think even though this is a poem, it really feels like a storytelling. Like if I was reading a children's book, it brings me memories of childhood, and just feeling like I'm about to dream. It is really nice. Could you tell us a bit more about um, the story, like how you came up with it, the context?
Certainly. And thank you very much for the compliments. I was an actor for many years and still am an actor. And as using that and the respect of being a voice actor, I've been able to practice and train my voice to do many things. In terms of the actual story itself, this was inspired purely by one line in a Don McLean song, and this was purely by the song Starry Starry Night, which is about Vincent van Gogh. This is about Vincent van Gogh. I Will Lend You My Ear is a direct reference to Vincent van Gogh. Your Loving Vincent is also a reference to a movie that was recently created a couple of years back. You may or may not have seen it, which was created by something like 50 to 100 artists that all painted the same way Vincent van Gogh did, and created this entire movie in his entire style, and said that whenever Vincent wrote to his family, and he would finish off every letter that he ever wrote with "Your Loving Vincent," and that was also the title of the movie. When I first wrote this, the prompt for the day talked about finding creation, and it was one of the earliest prompts there. And I thought about it and thought, okay, remember Vincent van Gogh was very, very much a very descriptive person, and the landscapes that he would paint would always be these extravagant things that would go on and on and on. And what would you do if you were to have your creation talk back to you? It would be very, very much like a child, in the respect that it would just want to keep doing and keep going to more, and then let's keep building upon that. Oh, so that's something cool, but can we add this more? And can we keep doing this and keep doing this? And eventually that whole world stops, and the creation doesn't know why, because the artist died. So having that loss between both the creator and the creation, there is a certain bond that is formed between both art and artist that any creator will be able to understand. And if you could have your own creation speak back to you, that is what I think it would sound like. If you manage to nurture your own creativity, that want to always do more, that childlike dream of let's keep going, let's keep building upon it, let's keep going to a different expanse, that very, very much was the inspiration behind this.
Thank you so much for that. It's really nice to see how you were inspired by these different sort of pieces of information, and especially I did notice that there were some reference to Van Gogh, and actually the painting itself, it's so picturesque in a way that it has the sun, and it has the trees and the lake, and the water flowing, and I think it's really interesting. Yeah, I think one of the things I really liked about this poem is, as you said, the relationship between the artist and its creation. And I think it's your reflection in a way. When you create something, it becomes alive. It has its own heart. It has its own form, its own shape, if its own essence that you have put in there as your creation or as your child. And you see it grow as you keep on building the creation and enhancing it and putting things here and there and brush strokes like Van Gogh. And so until you come to this amazing end product. And as something also very interesting by the end of the poem is that, as we all do as humans, we all die, and the creation lives on. And there's this kind of fracture in the chronology that follows the artist, in which our creations keep on going, whereas we stop living, and how these creations are, for example, in terms of Van Gogh, his creations were not even popular while he was alive, but until he died, they became extremely popular. So yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations on that one. I really liked it.
Thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad you liked it.
And also, besides that, the way you wrote it, like the writing style that you have, I could feel the rhymes and how it flowed. So it really is a very soft storytelling. It has its rhythm, and the dialogues really make us see these two characters interacting with each other. And that's always very interesting to have in poetry, because it often comes in storytelling, in prose, when we have these dialogues. And when you have them in poetry and you make that the essence of the poem, it gives it another feeling. Amazing. I love the part when you put the sun, and can we put the sun as well so that it could be sunny? And like, that's how we come with these details, because sometimes there's something missing and we don't notice, and we keep adding and adding more things until we see, this is the end product. So yeah, as a painter might do, I guess. So very interesting insights. Have you ever painted anything?
No, I am very good at drawing stick figures, and that is the extent of my knowledge there. I wish I could paint, I wish I could draw. That it would be a very nice skill to learn, but I'm very, very good at drawing with the English language, not so much actually with pots and paints. I can make some very nice stick figures. I make a mean stick figure.
This was the first part of our interview with the Paperman. Please click on the next episode to listen to the second part. Thank you for listening to the Poetry Lighthouse. If you liked this episode, don't forget to share and subscribe to our podcast. You can also visit our website, thepoetrylighthouse.com, where you can read and submit your works of poetry and short stories. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to keep updated. This is the end of the episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.